So thank you for tuning in and checking me out. And I want to say that I'm doing this as a selfish thing. I'm doing this for me. And I'm not doing this because I think I'm going to make a lot of money at it. That's a stretch. I'm sure I won't make a penny on this. I'm not doing this because I want to make a bunch of new friends and stuff. That would be great. Making a bunch of money would be great. But that's not my intention. My intention is to spread this deep knowledge, insight, realization. Let's go realization. I just feel that I've got to tell people. And the thing is that this is one of those things where you just can't blurt it out because, no one will take you seriously. And everybody is susceptible to this. When I'm looking through subjects to occupy my mind with, and I see somebody proclaiming flat earth and stuff, and they may have thought that thing through and they may have something, but I'll never know because it is so far out there. It is so far from my way of thinking that I don't want to waste any time on it. And so in this way, I want to tell my story in a way that you'll understand without just blowing it off.
Mathematics as I possibly can to understand why Einstein could not complete his unified field theory. Well, today I can read that book. I can read from Einstein's unified field theory, the theory that may one day answer these questions about higher dimensions, about time travel, about starships and hyperdrive. I can read that book now. And I realize that all the dead ends that he was hitting, I can see where he stopped, where certain avenues were promising, but he simply couldn't take it any farther. And the reason why is because the nuclear force was not known till the 1970s, and yet he was working on the unified field theory starting in the 1920s. This was an impossible task. He was putting together a jigsaw puzzle with one of the big pieces missing. And that big piece was the nuclear force. I'm going to have to learn as much mathematics as I possibly can.
I hope that makes some kind of sense in it. And, if that doesn't resonate with you right away, this thing's probably not going to work for you. I hope it does. And I hope that you share it and tell people and follow along as I develop my stories and my perspective on things so that you will also come to the conclusion that I came to, or a different conclusion that is something for you. But whatever the conclusions you come to, I hope will break you out of being stuck in this world with all this hate and craziness, just craziness. And I gotta kind of look at the craziness as like when a crab in the bottom of the ocean needs to grow, and the only way it can is to get out of its shell and to molt and to form a new one, and that new bigger shell gives them room to grow. And that's the way I have to look at what's going on in our society. So I want to get into it right here because what I'm trying to do is show science, mysticism, religion, And all this is talking about and looking for the same answers. So, you know, when Newton made his laws of gravity, and you know those story about the apple hitting him on the head, whatever the real story is, who knows, but you know that works. So we have Newton, and he enlightens everyone to a new way of thinking about things. And gravity is one of the main points. But what really happened is he's showing how math, the equations of math, is some kind of key to understanding our reality around us. So we go through the world with that kind of knowledge until we get to like Einstein. And Einstein is showing his math and how gravity is not the force that Newton was speaking about. We're coming from all the planets around and pulling towards them and that kind of thing. But he shows that the gravity isn't really a force. What it is it's bent space-time. So there's lots of ways that this can be distilled into your mind, and one of the easy ways to see that he is saying there's more than one reality. When you bend space and time, what you're doing is seeing that there is more than one reality. Like the story of the two astronauts, the twin astronaut brothers. One goes on this trip at the speeds close to the speed of light and comes back shortly thereafter, and he's, aged 25, 50 years compared to the other brother that wasn't traveling, was just sitting here on Earth waiting for him. That's showing the time dilation. And it's not intuitive. When you hear that story, you go, okay, I get it. I understand that that's what the math says, and that's what actually happens. But I don't have a clue to why that happens. It just sounds like something like magic. And magic is something that we don't understand. Once we understand it, it's not magic anymore, but it once was. So there's another story about a guy in a train bouncing a basketball. Now, he's bouncing that basketball straight up and down. And let's say the basketball takes 1 second to go from his hand to the floor and back to his hand. Now the train starts moving, and he's still bouncing that basketball. It's 1 second from the time he slaps it down to the floor to the time it comes back into the palm of his hand for him to do it again. Now it doesn't matter how fast the train goes. He's still doing this, and from his perspective, that's always happening the same, no matter how fast the train is moving or whether it's sitting still. Now, if the side of that train was clear and somebody beside the track was watching this, he would see the ball go down and move forward as the train was moving. So the ball's going straight down in the perspective of the dribbler, and from the observer off of the train, it's going down and forward. So it's taking more time to go an extra distance, but it's only taking that extra time to the person that's watching it outside the train. The person inside of the train is still seeing it go down and back up, straight up and down in 1 second intervals. To the person, depending on how fast the train was going, if it's going extremely fast, it might go down and forward 1 second each. And so now to that observer, it's taking 2 seconds. So that's the time dilation thing. And both are exactly correct. So if both of those are exactly correct, there are two different realities in that situation. The person on the train is one observer observing something that's really happening in a set amount of time, and the person off of the train is observing the same thing from a different vantage point and is having a different reality. I hope that makes some kind of sense. So even for the astronaut brothers, the two twins that separate, and one shoots up in space and going enormous speeds and comes back and he's much older. If there was an observer in the vast reaches of the universe that still had the ability to see that fine a detail from out there, he would see the thing all happening as a different reality from each brother. So that would be a third reality. So in effect, we all have our own personal realities depending on a lot of variables. And it's not just with space and time, it's also in the conscious area. In other words, with thoughts and emotions, those are all different for different people. And depending on the events that have happened in your past, different words and different interactions with people will cause you to have a different reaction than someone else. Sometimes those differences are understood and used to, well, like a con man that understands that kind of reality, that shift in reality, and can con people out of their money by presenting themselves as this wonderful, beautiful person that's trying to help them, perhaps. And they are using that knowledge in the same way. That's how a street musician would work. Like, say, a card trick or coin trick or something like that you might see on the street. The guy that's performing the trick, he understands that these different realities exist, and he can use the so-called sleight of hand to his advantage and cause your reality to be much different than his. So I hope all that made some kind of sense. I'm going to continue this a little bit later, and I just want to nudge you slowly into understanding that reality is much, much different than what it appears unless you give it a lot of thought. When you give it a lot of thought and understanding, things will change. And I think it changes for the better. Before I stop, let me just say this. My throat's getting dry. Throat cancer survivor. Yay! Okay. Okay, got me some water. Oh, yeah. I want to tell you something about, I want to say awakening. You know, But I don't want to say awakening because, you know, that's been inverted to woke. You know, I hear this people talk about woke as being something, you know, terrible. You know, it's like, you know, they stole the word to make it bad, which happens all the time. But let's not go off in that tangent, because what I wanted to tell you is this awakening. It's the old light bulb goes off, you know, the cartoon. Boop. That can happen from thinking about the situation. That could happen from a trauma. Or that can happen spontaneously. Different people's worlds and their realities. Different things can spark it. And that's my whole point, is I hope that something I say will make enough sense and spark that enlightenment, that awakening, that light bulb moment. You know, I don't have a large enough vocabulary or enough skills to articulate what I really want to say. So I'll just have to struggle along, and I hope that you guys will stay with me on this. For me personally, I had a fertile garden. The soil was all tended, just ready for a seed and water. And when I went through this throat cancer thing, that was the seed and the water. And poof, it's all grew. Now, I can give you a little bit of history about it all, and try not to bore you, but to make a very, very long story as short as possible, is I learned to meditate when I was very, very young. I was a young child suffering with migraines, which my mother also had. And in an attempt to help me, my mom taught me that when you're suffering from one of these really terrible migraines, if you lay down and get completely still and not move a single muscle in your body, that pain will slip away. And I always thought about it like I was able to hide from the pain. If I didn't move, it couldn't find me, type thing. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know that that was meditation, and I didn't know that the altered states that I was achieving was something that other people didn't know how to do, really. Even though I knew I didn't know how to do it before she taught me. Okay, so later on in life, I went through, you know, some of life's up and downs, and I was going through a difficult time, going through a divorce, as a matter of fact. And I was desperately searching for a way to mentally deal with this without it being so hard. So I was at a bookstore. Back then, all your books came in a store. And the store was divided into subjects. I was looking like in this self-help area, and I found a book on self-hypnosis. And I was going, wow, I've heard of hypnosis. And, I've seen it on TV where people go around on the stage and quack like a duck and don't realize they're doing it or something like that. So that might be interesting. So anyway, I learned self-hypnosis from these books. I bought several over a period of time. And learning that self-hypnosis, I was able to go into even deeper states of consciousness, of different altered states. And I used it from time to time in my life over the years. I didn't do it as an everyday practice. But when things came up in life, like when I got out of the Army and I was smoking a lot of cigarettes, and I decided I wanted to quit, and that was more difficult than I thought it would be. So I decided, after trying a couple of times and failing, that I'd go back and I'd use the hypnosis, and I did. And I was able to quit, cold turkey, as they say. It was immediately. I don't want to go into all the details of how I did that right now, but it worked, and it was worked in many, many, many situations. I've always used it as a fallback. It was never the go-to thing, that first thing I did. I always just tried to muddle through life. And then when things got, difficult or serious, I would always fall back on it as a weapon of mass destruction kind of thing, or a weapon of, I don't know how to call it, but I'd use the big guns then. That was the big guns. So, fast forward to this throat cancer, and I was already primed, and like I said, my garden was already tilled, and the soil ready for a seed. And right before I got diagnosed, I was looking at fractals, at Mandelbrot formulas, and looking at the newly created visual fractals that Mandelbrot and a computer put together could show you in all this stunning color and detail. And if you don't know what a Mandelbrot equation is, or a Mandelbrot fractal, go look it up. Look it on YouTube, and watch an animation of the math formula being drawn out by a computer with colors and shapes, and it's quite fascinating.
Perfect example of how a simple rule can produce incredible complexity. At its core, the set is generated by iterating a quadratic equation, a simple formula whose highest exponent is 2.
This subject came about with the goal of understanding the real world. What are the mathematics that underlie the physical world that we see? Most important early example would have been the solar system.
So dynamical systems, that you have some space where you have some rule that's deciding, as time moves on, how that space evolves and how things move and change in that space.
So anyway, I'm already looking at those things before I'm diagnosed, and I'm going, wow, this is just really fascinating how that tiny equation can do that. It just didn't seem possible, but there it was. And so at about the same time, I stumble into quantum physics, and I've always heard about how that, like the story of I can't say his name, Schrodinger's cat, where the cat's both alive and dead at the same time. You go, what? It doesn't make sense unless you give it a lot of thought. In the same way with if the tree falls in the woods and no one was there, did it make any noise? And you go, of course it made noise. No one heard it. But, you know, the real answer is it didn't make any noise because sound doesn't exist except for in a conscious mind. Now, I'm not saying that the airwaves, the frequency of the airwaves disturbing, the disturbance in the air doesn't actually happen and move through the atmosphere. But if there's no conscious ear, that's all it is. It's just a certain frequency of air compressed moving across the atmosphere. And it's not until it interacts with a conscious mind that sound happens. And that's true with color. There's no color in the universe. You know, it's a frequency of light. The color happens inside your mind. And I don't want to say inside your brain because that's a whole different story, and it's not inside your brain, it's inside your mind. It's inside your consciousness. In fact, as we go along with this story, over time, I hope to tell you that everything is that way. Everything is a frequency, and it only, the thing that you believe is happening, the color you think you're seeing, the sound you're hearing, it's all a mental thing. And that's true with even the stuff that you see, the hard physical stuff. It's a vibration of a field. Now that gets into quantum field theory. Water break. Water balls.
Many experiments in quantum mechanics tells you that when you make a measurement, being measured at the same time at different places, something, although not information, is going between them faster than the speed of light at infinite velocity. This is something which goes against special relativity, even general relativity. There is a problem here, but it's much worse. So many experiments in quantum mechanics tells you that when you make a measurement, you don't affect the particle in the sense that its future moments are being affected. You affect it also backwards, which means something really crazy. It means that it is not only that the future is open, but the past is not fixed, at least at the quantum level. We have papers on that. We have experiments which have been proved recently. I presented such a paper in a conference which you were present. So we are at the verge of a huge revolution, which is at the magnitude of relativity and quantum mechanics at the beginning of the 20th century.
Quantum field theory says that a physical atom becomes physical when a field is excited. And every atom has a different field. And it's like the sound and the sight. So one atom would have a field, say, of light energy, a light wave, and that would be color. And another field would have a vibration in the field, a disturbance, and we'd call that sound. Now, those aren't color and sound, but they are the difference between the atoms. It's all a vibration of a certain type of field that when it comes in, when it encounters a conscious thing, that conscious thing interprets it as a solid atom. I'm hesitating there because, of course, atoms are not solid. An atom is 99.999% empty space. the tiniest thing that we call matter, or what we call mass, I should say, is the nucleus, the proton and neutron. A tiny, tiny little speck in the atom has some mass. It has all the mass of the atom. That mass is what I'm talking about. That comes into reality because of a conscious mind. And that's, demonstrated by the double slit experiment. If you haven't seen the double slit experiment, that's another thing. Go look at that. Now, it's been demonstrated for over 100 years by every physics class in America, practically, worldwide. And it's still controversial because most scientists are what is called a physicalist, and they believe that everything in the world is a physical thing that becomes physical at the beginning of space-time. The Big Bang pops everything into existence as a physical item, and they don't want to let go of the fact that that has been proven wrong over and over and over and over again. And it is one of those things that can't be accepted. The seed won't grow in gravel. It's not going to grow in a field of rocks in the desert. In other words, your mind has to be fertile for that seed to grow. Things that you see or you hear or things that you experience that you don't have any reference point to does not appear the same as to someone that has a reference point to it. In other words, all the things in your life that has happened to you, all the people you've met, all the TV shows you've seen, all the experiences, all your highs and lows, and everything in your life has contributed to how you're going to see the world. And for the vast majority of people, all that has added up to a place that they are not able to comprehend. That mental field is not fertile. The ground isn't tilled up. There's no moisture for the seed to grow. And so it's going to be experienced in a totally different way. Well, I've gone on for a long time here. And I hope some of that made some sense. And I'm going to try to expand on those thoughts in ways that will till the soil, will cause a little bit of moisture to propagate into the soil, and maybe one of these things will become a seed and it'll grow for you. And if not, that's okay too. But I think there's a lot of benefit to be had for growing that garden and keeping the weeds out. Okay, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, subscribe or tell your friends and see if we can get this stuff to grow. That would be really, really great. Appreciate it, guys.